welcome to Talking Home Renovations with a House Maven. I am your host, Catherine McPhail. I'm an architect working in Eastern Massachusetts, and my specialty is renovations and additions to existing homes. I started this podcast so that homeowners could get an idea of what goes into a home renovation and maybe cut down on the amount of stress they might feel in embarking on this project when it's something new. So I interview vendors, experts, subcontractors, contractors, other architects, homeowners, about their home renovation experience. In this particular episode, I will be speaking with an indoor air quality expert, Andre Lacroix. Andre attended Lake Forest College and founded Easy Breathe Ventilation Systems with his wife, Erica, in 2005. They've spent the last 15 years dedicated to learning about the relationship between one's home and one's health. And in addition to Easy Breathe, Andre is a certified indoor environmentalist, certified healthy home specialist, and a certified radon measurement provider. He's dedicated to helping individuals improve their indoor air quality through small adjustments that make a big impact. Here's my conversation with Andre. Andre, thanks for joining me today. And indoor air quality is not something that I know about it in a bad way. In that I was just away for 3 weeks and my basement flooded, and and so that's where my office is. And so it's the air quality is not great down here.
Of course, yeah.
So I only know about it when it becomes a problem, and also, of course, because I live in an old house that is not, airtight.
Yes.
I guess I just don't bother to worry about it too much. But
sure,
I probably should be. But then if I did, I have no idea what to do. So maybe you could help me.
Understood. Sure. It's interesting because indoor air quality is not something. It's not water on the floor like you experienced. It's not a crumbling basement wall. It's not something people see. It's a lot of times people don't even connect the dots because they're not obvious to them until we start talking about it. Like, if somebody is sick or somebody is again, I'm not saying that asthma is a direct result of the home, but you see that people who are sick or kids that are sick, maybe once they leave the home, they're not as sick when they're in their schools or at their offices or things like that. And it's not till you really start to look at your habits and routines and realize that, there's some cases out there where the houses are making people sick. It could be a lot of different things, but because it's nothing that you can see, right? And until obviously this most recent historical event, people didn't even think about air at all, right? And anything like that. That it's becoming a lot more popular because of that. But even as far as the home, people don't really think about their indoor air quality. And then I start running around and shooting my mouth off and talking and scaring the heck out of people about what's actually possibly in their home. And all of a sudden it starts to become more prevalent,
Yeah, it is a little scary to think about. I mean, I have done, I did an episode on mold. There's a 3-part episode: mold, lead, and asbestos. So
sure. Yep.
Things people don't want to think about. They don't want to think about what else could be, but what are the nasty pollutants that could be in your home?
Sure. So it's interesting because one of the first things I always tell people is whether it's you consider it good or bad, a lot of the pollutants that are in the home are a direct result of us. Right. And how we live, right? We bring them into our home, whether it be new carpeting, new furniture, the candles and the incense that we burn, all that stuff. So the fact that we bring them in, we can also get rid of them, right? So that's point number one is we can do that. Point number two is there's small little remediation things that can be done. Something more serious. You have things on the real serious side, like radon, for example. Radon is quite serious. It's the second leading cause of lung cancer in all people behind smoking, and the first leading cause of lung cancer in non-smokers. So that's real serious, and then you get to things that maybe just give people the sniffles, or maybe there's that musty smell in the basement. So it comes up, and so people just want to burn a candle or have some incense to kind of mask it. It's not that they're masking it. They think they're making the right choices. They're just making problems worse. So you have everything from formaldehyde, radon, and then you have the smaller little things like maybe stuff that just exists as a result of the off-gassing of a brand new couch or new carpeting, right? The people think, oh, there's that new carpet smell. Well, that's not a normal smell. It's not a normal smell. It'll eventually go away. Sometimes it'll take 10 years, but it runs the gamut of things that are just minor nuisances to things that could, impact us quite seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about when I was a kid and I got a new doll for Christmas or something, there was a definite new doll smell that was
Of
probably just
course. Yep.
off-gassing of that plastic.
Yeah, it is. And I tell people that those smells, when you bring those products into your home, that's not a normal smell, right? I tell people, if you decide to not have a real Christmas tree, but then you burn a pine scented candle in your bathroom or your kitchen, that's not a Christmas tree in your kitchen. Those are chemicals that has a combustion source. There's heating element that then lets off these chemicals that are supposed to smell like that. That's not natural.
Oh my, that is so depressing. That is such a
See,
bummer, Andre.
That's why I'm not very fun at cocktail parties.
No, yeah. I can't imagine. Yeah, at a Christmas party, probably bring it down.
I tell people, if you have the kind of couch that comes with, or you add a spray on there so that your child can spill grape juice and it just comes right off, that's not a natural product. That product is not naturally meant to be in the home. First of all, it's not natural. It was man-made. Again, I'm not knocking specific products. I'm just saying we have to take these kind of things into consideration and recognize that if we're doing this, we affect our house. And so we need to ventilate. We need to purify. We need to source control. We need to do things that will help us and our house,
Okay, so what can we do?
Sure. So the EPA suggests 3 different things. Number 1 is source control. Okay, so let's take your basement for an example. Source control means eliminating the water, right? Eliminating the source. Maybe it was a bad downspout. Maybe it's a concrete block and we need to waterproof it. The source might be radon. Again, that's a whole topic for another day, but we can redirect the air up and out of the house so it doesn't come into our basement. So source control is number 1, getting rid of the fake smelling pine, getting rid of the cinnamon apple crumbler candle. Getting source control, getting rid of the sources. That's number 1. Number 2, we ventilate. Okay. In our bathrooms and in our kitchens now, we have fans for both those spaces. And the reason why it's code is because those are sources of contaminants. Your bathroom, it might just be moisture from the shower, but technically that's a contaminant. Okay. So we have to install, by code, fans in our bathrooms now. In our kitchens, we have to install range hoods. Okay, because of those are contaminants, what we are heating and burning off and boiling and things like that. The house is no different. So number 2 is ventilation. We need to ventilate that air, take the air that's inside their house, evacuate it outside, and create these whole house air exchanges. And then number 3 is I shouldn't say extreme cases, but is air purification for people that absolutely they have something going on, and so you'll put purifiers. There are such things as whole house purifiers, but you'll see the smaller machines that you can buy, and people will put those into bedrooms or where they spend more time because they are either immunocompromised or they have something going on where those rooms need to be super, super clean. So we have air purifiers. So it's source control, ventilation, and purification. And source control, somewhat easy. Ventilation, very, very easy.
Yeah. Easy if it's you.
Easy.
You just call you, and then you come home and make it easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
so exactly.
So what does that look like? I mean, if I have an old house.
Yep.
It has insulation. I don't think the windows are that leaky.
Sure.
But I still think there's a lot of air exchange because a lot of my windows are open because I don't have air conditioning. So obviously that's.
Yep.
But so who should worry about it? Should everybody worry about it? Just people with new houses, old drafty houses? Those people still have to worry about it?
Great question. Yes. And I'll say yes, but let me back up a little bit and say drafty houses aren't bad, right? We all remember our grandparents. My grandparents, was born in Philadelphia. My grandparents grew up in a row home, and my mom grew up in a row home, and that house was real drafty, right? Those little white, sheer shades were always moving. That's not a bad thing, right? But at the same time, we're not controlling, if you will, the drafts. We're letting in humid air. We're not controlling where the air comes in. That is not necessarily a good thing in our basement, right? Because we're going to be letting in humid air into our basement. That's not a good place because it's a darker area. It's lower in temperature. And then that humid air gets in there, and due to what we call the stack effect, which is the same concept as how a hot air balloon works, right? Warm air rises. So the stack effect, all that air in the basement comes up. So while in effect loose houses or or venting, real loose houses with regards to tightness, they're not a bad thing. But where we really get into the problem is people that are tightening their house. And that's a good thing, but we have to think of the house as a whole system. I think of, my building science background is the house. You have to look at it holistically, right? If you do one thing to one side of the house, that affects the other side of the house. So if we tighten up our house, we put in all new triple paned windows, we put in blown insulation, anything like that, we are making that house that used to be drafty and not bad because it was creating its own little air exchanges. Now we're basically sealing up, we're putting saran wrap around our house, and everything that we breathe, we cough, we sneeze, the dogs, the shower, all that stuff, we spray the cleaners, all that stuff now is no longer just kind of coming and going through the house. It's stuck in there. The off-gassing we talked about before. So now we need to create ventilation that doesn't exist anymore.
How do you do that?
Sure. So there's a few different ways. If you talk about spot ventilation, so you take a hot shower, you have that shower, right? You have that. You take that concept and then you put it into the whole house environment, like what we do with Easy Breathe. And we take a whole house ventilation system. If you grew up like I did, you grew up with a ventilation fan, an attic fan upstairs in the ceiling of your second floor, and you turn that thing on and the vents opened and you ran to the window and you felt all the cold air coming in. It felt good, right? Not you're venting, but that's the complete wrong approach, right? So what we've done at Easy Breathe, we flip that on its head, and now we take the worst air, which is in your basement, and we exhaust that in its location where it comes in the basement, or where it's worst is in the basement. We exhaust that to the outside, and then what we've done is by getting rid of that air naturally has to be replaced with something. So the good air that's on the first floor, that's just better than the basement, then comes down through the stairwell or through some vents that we add. And then that air coming down creates these whole house air exchanges, and we're evacuating out the bad stuff, including the stuff we talked about on the first floor, right? So we're getting rid of the air in the basement. That stuff we talked about on the first floor that may not be as good either is now brought down, and we create these whole house air exchanges that just allows your air basically 6 to 8 times a day with an Easy Breathe running, you're able to completely evacuate the volume of air in your house and replace it with fresh air.
So is that moving air? Is it like a fan? Can you feel it?
You don't feel it. No, great question. And that's an important question, because I always try and tell people we've engineered the product, the Easy Breathe, to run at what 128 CFM, or cubic feet per minute. So you're not like the analogy I made before about turning on the attic fan and then running to the window and feeling it. That doesn't happen. And it's for a reason, right? We want to evacuate the air out, but we don't want to create any sort of feeling of air movement, because we don't want to create a vacuum. We don't want doors to slam. We don't want anything like that to be occurring. We don't want to be pulling air from areas where you don't want to pull it from. Essentially, you want it to just naturally come down from the upper levels through the basement stairwell. And so while you don't feel it, we're literally installing our unit on an outside wall and exhausting it directly to the outside, and then just allowing that air to be replaced with the upstairs air. So you don't even feel any sort of air movement. I run around some houses and I'll do what they're called smoke pencil tests with some air, and that'll puff out puffs of smoke, and you'll see the air traveling down the stairs, but it's not so much that you just feel it,
Right. Well, the air is almost always moving anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So for a 2,000 square foot house, let's just say a 2.5 story house, is it just one unit in the exterior wall of the basement, and
Correct.
then you put some kind of vent in, like a register or something like that, in the floors, so
if it's a basement, what we'll do is exactly right. We'll install the unit on an exterior wall as far away from the basement stairs as possible. Okay, that way we create the longest path for that air to travel and evacuate out of the house. And then the way to replace that air is a number of different ways. We can use floor vents. That's not a problem. We've done that. We also have done vents in the actual doors to the basement. Now, some houses have open concepts and an open stairwell, so we don't have to create any sort of venting. It's just naturally going to happen. Some people naturally leave their doors open with kids and pets and things like that. That might not be possible for people. So there is venting options. But yeah, we have to create that, what we call the return air pathway. And if it doesn't exist on its own, then we get creative with venting. We can shave off the bottom of the door so that air can get under the door. It's a pretty simple concept. Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem pretty simple. So it seems like it's just the unit that you put into the basement wall is the only mechanical piece?
Yeah, it's exactly. Yep. The hardest part physically is drilling a hole to the outside. It's a 6-inch hole, so I tell people it's very similar to your dryer vent, except the dryer vent is a 4-inch hole. So ours is a 6-inch hole that goes to the outside. It looks just like a dryer vent on the outside. But from a physical standpoint, it's literally just drilling the hole through the rim joist to the outside. Sometimes it's through a block wall. And then it's aside from that, it's just conceptually figuring out where can we locate that to be the farthest away from the stairwell so we can create that maximum airflow. We want to stay away from the basement tends to have combustion appliances like hot water heaters and things like that. We want to stay away from them, right? Because we don't want to be backdrafting anything. Back to what I said before is by only moving 128 CFM, it's not enough air movement typically. If we were to install it right next to one of those, then yeah, theoretically it could happen. But aside from the physical part of installing it, drilling the hole to the outside, then it's just a matter of deciding where to put it. And then it's a plug and play. You plug it in. We've got 2 dials on it. One is a humidistat setting, which is a sensor so that you can adjust it to go on and off by humidity levels if you want. It's not a dehumidifier, obviously, but we got people that want to know that when that air from the upstairs makes it down, the unit may shut off. That's okay. And so you have that humidistat. In my house, because this is the air, what I live in, right? Not physically what I live in, but my world is indoor air quality. I have mine set to run nonstop, 24/7, and has for almost 20 years. So you set that, and then you set the fan speed, and you're good to go.
How old is your house?
My house was built in 1999. I moved in 2003. Installed an Easy Breathe because obviously, with the company, and I say it hasn't turned off. Of course, we've lost power here and there, but essentially, I've been running it nonstop since we installed it.
So your house was probably built. Well, it's more of a modern house, so it was built a little more tight. It's a little more tight than other houses. It's like a house in 1890 house or like 1820 house. Do they still need it? Even do the drafty houses need this?
Well, that's a great question, and where I would go with that is depending on the basement, right? So you're in Massachusetts, and if I were to walk into a house with a fieldstone basement, as the foundation versus a block wall or a modern house with a poured wall, then I would hesitate because what we don't want to do is install a ventilation system and then attract air directly outside through the cracks and crevices of the fieldstone. Right. So so there are situations where the Easy Breathe is not a good fit, or any sort of ventilation is not a good fit. And it would be something like that, in drafty houses that are like maybe upstairs is drafty. We still think it's a good idea because we still think you need those, assuming you have a sealed basement, right? With those block walls or concrete or poured walls. If we can ensure that the air from the upstairs makes it to the basement, even if the upstairs is drafty, we still like to install them because we like to create those whole house air exchanges. It's where you get into the draftiness of the basement that Easy Breathe might not be a fit because we don't just want to exchange air 1-for-1 from the outside directly to the inside of the basement. Does nothing for the upstairs and just brings more humidity potentially into the basement. We don't want to do that. Right.
So I have a question about, you'd mentioned unnatural or chemicals that we're smelling. And this is maybe a little bit off topic, but I'm not sure this is right, that when you smell something, there's a little molecule of that thing in your nose. Is that true? I mean, that's what I think, which is why with my imagination, it gets really gross really fast when I smell certain things.
Yes.
But anyway, so if we have these molecules of these chemicals in our noses, and that's no good. What about things like more natural, like cooking odors?
Yeah.
Are those bad for us? Onions, garlic, all that stuff?
No, they're not. No, they're not. You're not wrong. That's exactly what happens. And one of the things I tell people is to be wary of the sprays and the things and the plug-in air fresheners, because what those are doing is those really are masking the things that you're talking about, the smelling, right? These things aren't the sprays and stuff. They're not taking care of the stuff in the air. They're actually making it into your nose and deadening those receptors so that you're not smelling anything else.
No, that's so
it's
gross.
Weird how that works, right? It doesn't negate it over here in the airspace. It takes care of that in your nose. That's a bad thing. So natural smells, and so I've mentioned candles before. Something like beeswax candles. Natural things are good, but then you get into, okay, let's say we're cooking and we're just doing veggies, but what are we cooking those veggies with, because that's also burning off. Are we, we have to think. I know we're getting really micro at this point now, but
no,
there are some. No, it's a great question. There are absolutely some smells that are better than others. And when I give these indoor air quality talks, sometimes I have to hold back because I don't want to use brand names and things like that, because I really get into like how bad things can get. But there's definitely natural things like you just mentioned that are okay. It's just a matter of how are those smells being emitted? Like, what is the combustion process that's happening to emit those smells, right? You bring in a pine tree for Christmas. It's a natural tree. Now, there are some kids, one of my sons included, that's allergic to that stuff, right? But you bring in a pine tree for Christmas. That's something natural that you brought in. Unless you're allergic, there's nothing wrong with that. But you bring in a candle that you have to light, and essentially you create a combustion process to create that smell. That's not natural. The pine tree is. The other stuff isn't.
Okay.
Does that help answer that?
Yeah, I just think it's pretty interesting because when you go to someone's house, it has a certain smell to it.
Yes.
So that can be your grandparents' house smells a certain way, or your childhood friend's house smells a certain way. So when you smell that smell again somewhere, it's like such a memory trigger.
Yeah.
So that doesn't have, I guess it does have to do with indoor air quality, because the reason our houses smell like that is because probably they're not well ventilated, and it's
right.
Whatever it is.
And ventilation in the house is it's universally become, especially nowadays, more and more accepted. So while certain things, I do talk to people a lot who say, oh, well, I grew up in this house, like you said, grandma's house, I never had a problem, right? That may be true, but the other side of it is ventilating that house is not a bad thing. You know what I mean? Just because you grew up and you were healthy doesn't mean that adding on a healthy option isn't a good thing, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. I don't know about that argument. Like, we grew up with it and we're fine. Like, how do you know? We could have been way more fine.
Totally true. I totally agree with that. Agree with that. We actually, we don't know this yet. We may have taken off 10 years of our life because of that. And whatever that is, it could be indoor air quality, it could be what we choose to eat or whatever,
Right.
Totally agree. I'm with you on that mindset for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes people would say that in my family, because there was lead covered houses that we all lived in, and they all say, oh, we were fine. Like, actually, we're not. We're not really fine.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's an interesting point because, as you just mentioned, you might be fine, but what are the daily adjusted, there's these things called the daily DALYs, daily adjusted life years, right? So we don't know right now whether or not we've lost, or whoever these people are that lived in this house with the lead or with the asbestos, they might be fine right now, but we don't know if studies will show that they've lost a certain number of years having lived in that environment. They may not know that right now, but the studies just say that that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah, it makes sense when you read about the effect that these things have on people. So
absolutely.
So what you do, you're in Ohio.
Yes.
Are you part of a group of people? So if someone wanted to look into this, is there a certain person they would look up in the yellow pages, if anybody has yellow pages anymore, or there are other people who do what you do, I guess is what I'm saying.
So if we're referring really to two things. So one is the Easy Breathe company that manufactures and sells the Easy Breathe ventilation system. Easybreathe.com is that website if you want to add ventilation to your house. The other side of it is me being a indoor environmentalist, a healthy home specialist, a radon specialist. There's a website called IAQA.org, Indoor Air Quality Association. And that's the association that I'm a member of, who certifies me with all the certifications that I have. And people can go to that, and there's a button that says Find a Pro. They click on that, and you plug in your zip code and how far away from that, it's a bullseye kind of a thing. And you can find somebody that way. If you're looking to do some ventilation, then you just go to easybreathe.com. Or you call us and we can either talk with you over the phone, or we can put you in touch with somebody in your area in Massachusetts or wherever it may be, and your local person that carries the Easy Breathe. And now the person that carries the Easy Breathe may not be an indoor environmentalist like myself, right?
Right.
We have waterproofers and mold remediators and pest control people that carry our product. You name it, handymen, all kinds of different contractors carry our product. But those kind of guys we can put you in touch with from an Easy Breathe standpoint, or you go the indoor air quality route as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So it's something that it's a product that people carry. Easy break.
So yeah, so I got into it because we recognized that we were ventilating the basement because we recognized that we wanted to ventilate the basement because people were unable to use their basements, right? So we started ventilating the basement, and this is 20 years ago. But we recognized that we were having a good effect, a positive effect on the upstairs as well, right? But really what we did is we got in the business to ventilate basements so that basements could be used again 20 years ago. So when we recognized we were having an effect, and these were all anecdotal stories, that we were having an effect on the living space, that's when I started doing more going and getting educated on this and recognizing the importance of whole house air exchanges. So I kind of naturally now have two paths. I have as the owner of Easy Breathe Ventilation System, right? But also as an indoor air quality consultant that whether you're in the market for an Easy Breathe or not, I go that route, and whether I'm in person or over the phone or whatever, I do consulting that way as well.
Okay. Do you mind if I ask you about Radon?
Please do.
Because that's something that is related,
Yes.
Of course, very related. So,
Yes.
and I'm always talking about me all the time. It's all about me. Okay, so my house,
Good.
my house we bought without an inspection or anything, which I don't recommend, but that's what we did. And so we never got a radon test.
Okay.
And now, since the pandemic started, I work in the basement.
Yep.
So, of course, when we start talking about radon and causing lung cancer and everything, I wonder if I should do a radon test here and I'm on ledge.
Yeah.
So it feels like I kind of don't want to know now that I've been down here for 70 hours a week.
Sure. That's you bring up an excellent point. So a couple things about radon. Just because your neighbor may have high radon doesn't mean you don't, right? Radon comes from the earth. So the house next door, the house across the street may have high levels or may have zero. It has nothing to do with what your level of the house is. Overall, the EPA put out a radon map, and there are certain parts of the country that overall, from a 20,000 foot view, have more levels. And that EPA radon map is an interesting one to look at. But even when you dig down, there's a difference between houses, right, and next door neighbors and things like that. So that said, let's talk about that for a second. So the EPA action level is 4.0 picocuries per liter. That's how they measure. Interestingly, the World Health Organization's level is 2.7.
Yeah.
So it leads somebody to ask, wait a second, how is there two different levels? Well, because neither one is a safe level. They're what they call action levels. There is no safe level of radon. There's an action level. So the action level, meaning where you should take care of it, is at 4.0. That doesn't mean, and the statistics show, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have problems if you have 3.5. It also shows you're not going to have any more problems at 5.5 than you do 3.5. The study shows. Okay, not to discount radon, because again, let's remember, it is a very serious, the leading cause of lung cancer outside of tobacco smoke, right? It's an action level, not a safe level. So that said, the other thing with radon is, and you mentioned spending a lot of time in your basement, it's not just getting the level, but it's how much time you spend within the environment, right? So if someone has a level, I've been in houses that have measured over 300, but they're never, that's different than a house that maybe has 100 and they're in their basement all the time. So I would suggest it getting tested. And just for your knowledge, knowing that 4.0 is the action level, does that mean at 4.5 you put in a radon system, but at 3.5 you don't? That's certainly a question that you could answer for yourself, because I think people need to know, right? Because what are the chances? I don't know what the chances are that your level would come back at 150 or 363, like I said, I've been in. But I think it's better to know, and then you can then remediate or install a system if necessary. They're not that difficult of systems to install. They're not exactly sightly, to be honest with you, but they do the job. So I don't know if I've helped you on that. I do a lot of talks on radon. The thing that I want people to understand, and here's the thing about getting tested for radon, is anything under 90 days is considered a short-term test. Well, that's a long time, especially when you talk about real estate transactions. They're doing 3 and 4 day tests.
Yeah, that's way shorter.
So if you're going to do it the right way, nothing against realtors, because the association that certifies me in radon has shown me how to do a 3 or 4 day test. I tend to not agree with them because you have to completely alter your life for 4 days. So for example, if you're going to do a 4-day test, you have to close everything up. You can't run any ventilation systems, which means not just an easy breathe if you have it, but you can't dry your clothes. You can't run your bathroom fan. You can't run your kitchen range hood because it's only a 4-day test. You have to seal up your house and you're only allowed to come and go when it's absolutely necessary. Kind of weird, right? When you get to a long-term test, you live your life like you normally would. Don't you want that kind of a result? You get a result back after 4 days and your house is sealed up and it's elevated. You're instantly going to go, well, it's because I wasn't coming and going. And I didn't have my windows open. I did because. So when it comes to testing, that's what I recommend people is 2 weeks at least. If you can do longer, the better. Typically the kits that you can get from the hardware stores, which are totally legit, you take them, they're easy to use. You use them for 2 weeks and then you mail them off to, depending on which lab these companies work with, you mail them off and you get your results. There are certain, if you're going to go that route and not hire a guy like me, which I recommend, get one follow it word for word and then mail it off and get your results. If they come back high, then you call in a radon professional who comes in and puts a monitor in there and will monitor it for a couple months if that's what you need.
Okay, so I think I'm just going to cut to the chase and have a radon specialist.
I would I would recommend it. It's always good to know.
Honestly, it has been bothering me a lot since I started working down here, last March. So, okay, so let's say I have it. You said it was unsightly.
Kind of, yeah.
So this is my understanding of it. It's like a PVC sort of thing that goes underneath your slab in your basement.
Yep.
Right, gathers the radon and then puts it up. So where's the unsightly part?
So let me define unsightly because I don't want any of the radon professionals to hate me for saying it. It's unsightly, meaning it's different than what was there before, which is nothing. Right? It's
okay. I don't know if that's the definition of unsightly, though.
Okay. So, but what it is, it's a 4-inch PVC pipe that has to run up the inside of your house, at least to the basement. At some point, it then turns and goes to the outside. And then it'll run up the outside of your house. Okay. There's certain regulations as far as how far it has to run above the roof line, has to be away from any operable windows, things like that. They also have to install a fan, typically in your attic, that will help pull the air up. Because if a radon system is installed during construction, typically it would be installed in the center of the house, right around where the stairwell is. And they do use fans, but they also rely on the stack effect. Remember the thing we talked about with the warm air rising? That works when it runs at the center of a house. That doesn't work when the radon system is installed on the exterior, which every aftermarket or remodel has to do, right? You're not chopping up the middle of your house and running a radon system right above. So it's a 4-inch PVC pipe that's going to run up on the inside of your house. There's going to be a little gauge on it, so you can't enclose it behind walls because there's going to be a little gauge on it to show that there's air movement. And if the gauge shows that there's no air movement, then it's not working. And so it's not evacuating the air with the radon that's in that air. The PVC pipe, they do come in, they jackhammer out your floor. They'll drop in a PVC bulb, a perforated bulb into the ground to capture the radon, what they call subslab depressurization. They capture all that radon, and with it will be moisture. So you will get a moisture reduction effect with it. Not complete moisture reduction, okay, but a lot of moisture comes up from the soil. So by definition, you will see a moisture reduction slightly. We can't gauge the exact number, but you will see a moisture reduction effect from this radon removal system, or radon reduction system, as they call it. So it comes in through the bulb, naturally goes up and out the 4-inch PVC pipe that then, again, typically at right around the top of your basement ceiling, or your floor joist is where it'll turn and go out, and then it has to go up the outside of your house, and then it runs up the outside of the house, and right around the attic is where you have to install the fan that helps, like an impeller fan that helps draw the air up and out. So unsightly, maybe that wasn't the right word. It's nothing was there prior is really.
I think it's the right word. I think that sounds unsightly.
Yeah.
So after you describe it, the pipe on the outside, but you have to do what you have to do.
Yeah. And what has to happen, what has to happen in the everyday world is that right now is like a red flag for people. Like that is oh wow, that house has a radon problem, right? And it's a shame because if someone's going to sell a house and that's there is a certain number of people out there rightfully so, because they don't know enough about it. They're going to go, what is that? Oh, that's a radon system. Oh my gosh, there's radon. And they walk away. When in fact, maybe somebody didn't have a radon system, or the fact that that's there means that there is a quote unquote acceptable level of radon, whereas the other house they're looking at, it might be high. Does that make sense? So I'm saying it shouldn't be a red flag. It shouldn't be a red flag at all. But with some people it is.
Well, they don't have a problem anymore because they fixed the problem. Right?
Exactly. So, it's just like going into a basement with a waterproofing system, right? If you go in and you see that the floors have been jackhammered out and there's a sump pit in the corner, that's not a scary thing. That's an upgrade. That's what we need to get. That's what we need the mindset to become with this. It's an upgrade.
I wish I had a sump pump system. That would be a definite upgrade, right? Yeah. Why wouldn't you want that? It doesn't. It floods in here about every 12 years or 8 years or something.
Okay.
That's enough.
Yeah. And so for you, I would go to your local hardware store or whichever one you use. Yeah. There are a lot of counties, at least it exists here in Ohio. There are counties that will give out free radon kits to homeowners once a year. So some people that don't want to spend the $40 on a radon kit, you can apply to your county to get one. Otherwise, you can get them for about $40. There's, like I said, there's certain parameters where you have to install it, where it has to be relative to an outside wall, where it has to be relative to an inside wall, as far as off of the walls, where it has to be in what you call your breathing space. It can't be on the ground. It can't be at the ceiling. It sounds difficult, very, very easy. You set it and forget it for 14 days and then mail it off. And then you get your results.
Okay.
Easy done.
I'm going to do that and hope for the best. Hope I don't have to get that.
Yep.
Anything else happening. But it would be good for peace of mind, and everybody should check it. I mean, everybody should check it.
They really should. They really, really should. I think it's just one of those, I test mine every year. And it's just, so real quick, the outside levels are 1.7, by the way. So 1.7 is what just naturally exists outside. So just so people understand, radon is constantly off-gassing from the earth, right? It's always there. The problem, what happens is we now put this huge box down our house over the earth, right? And and it's still coming up. Now, granted, we have a slab floor. Supposedly we have, vapor barrier under that, whether or not it's still good after however many years, who knows, but what we've done is we've now plopped this structure down on top of what was naturally off-gassing. So now it's just off-gassing into the house and contained. And that's why that's why the levels rise. What is radon? Sure.
Maybe that's a stupid question.
It's an odorless, colorless gas, and it's a byproduct. It's a byproduct of uranium.
Uranium.
So, yep. And what it does is it attaches to the lungs, and it tricks the lungs into thinking that you have enough oxygen when you really don't. And that's where the problems happen, is in the lungs. And because it's so small, there's no filters that can collect radon. You cannot filter out radon. So that's why you need to evacuate it as is.
I'm just going to sit down here and think I can't breathe very well. It must be the radon. That's what I'm going to think.
This is why I'm no fun at cocktail parties, right?
But I think it's all really interesting, even though it's scary. So what else do you feel people should know? Would you like people to know before we go?
Sure. What I think that just look to your house for your health, right? Don't be so quick to run off and get a prescription for something or get an injection for something. Again, nothing against all that stuff. But if you're not feeling good, look internally. Look, the number of times that I've been at houses where kids that are asthmatic, and every month they're getting these injections, and I go into the house and I see that under the sink is just covered with mold and it's wetness. Not to say that that's the thing, but gosh, if we can take care, what if we fix that? And because there's been stories of this, what if we fix that and these kids no longer need inhalers? They no longer need injections. Isn't that way better than all the medicines and stuff like that, right? Like if you could, remember what I said in the very beginning, source control, right? So look to your house. Maybe get rid of some of these things that aren't the natural thing, They may smell good or whatever, but maybe just look around. What are you using to clean the house? What do you, all that kind of stuff. So just look internally in your own house and see where you can make a couple different changes that just may make the indoor air quality of your house a little bit better, because it does not take a lot.
Well, great. Thank you so much. And people who are in the middle of fixing up their houses, paying attention to that, where it's going to really affect your quality of life more than or just as much as any other kind of improvements you're making.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So any other websites you want to mention? You said easybreathe.com. Is that it?
Yep. Easybreathe.com brings you to us. Okay. And you can learn, there's a ton of information on our website about indoor air quality and the positive effects of ventilation, obviously, because that's what we do. So there's a lot of good homeowner resources there. If you're looking for a professional like myself, outside of EasyBreathe, then you go to the IAQA.org website and find a professional there. But those are the two. And the other really good website is the EPA website. If you go to EPA.gov and you put in / whatever you want, radon, mold, ventilation, water, the EPA website with regards to that stuff is really, it's an excellent website. I can't speak to anything outside of my world, but the EPA.gov / IAQ, mold, all that stuff is a really good resource. And the good thing about it is it's not promoting products and things like that. So what you're getting is a good balanced information on how to take care of your home.
Great. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, which is surprising to me.
Yeah.
Because, who would have thought? Who would have thought it'd be such an interesting subject? It really is. It really is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad.
I really did have fun speaking with Andre. Thanks, Andre, for teaching us about how we can improve our health in our homes. And thank you for listening. As you know, I love to get episode ideas from listeners. So if you'd like to get in touch with any ideas or comments, suggestions, anything, you can email me at thehousemaven@talkinghomerenovations.com or get me through Facebook or Instagram, where I am talking home renovations, and follow me there. Why not? TikTok, I'm the House Maven. Twitter, it's Talking Home Reno. And I'm also on Clubhouse. Are you on Clubhouse? I go to a lot of the podcast rooms, but I also go to some renovation rooms too. So anyway, if you're on Clubhouse, follow me there and I'll see what you're up to. My website, talkinghomerenovations.com, has the episode enhancements where I post photos and other information, and also the transcripts from a lot of these episodes, which eventually will be complete. I'm trying this thing. Okay. This might be fun. If you have found something strange in your house when you've been renovating or whatever, go to my website and tell me about it at the voicemail tab on the side. I think it says leave voicemail. It's a speak pipe type thing. So I'm hoping that I can do kind of a little compilation of people's stories, and I think that would be fun. So if you have something you want to share and it's just a little short thing, just leave me a message. And let's see what else. I'm having a class, kind of a get started on your home renovation type class. And that would be August 24th over Zoom. Again, information on my website. And a mastermind starting on August 31st, which is going to be a weekly Zoom meeting, I guess. Everybody hates Zoom these days, but I still like it. It's a great way to connect to people all over the place. And so I'm on Zoom most of the day. And anyway, it would be a weekly meeting where we talk about our wins and challenges and anything else people want to talk about related to their home renovation. So it's kind of like almost like having a support group for that. And I'll be moderating. Yeah, so if you like this episode, please leave a review and a rating and subscribe. And why not just go all the way and get my newsletter? And the link for that is in the show notes. When I publish Wednesday mornings, I just send the episode enhancements to people's inboxes. So that's what that is. So many ways to stay in touch. This podcast is a production of Demios Architects, where we believe architects are for everyone. So looking forward to next week, and until then, take care.